Hello and welcome back to Study With Additti. My name is Additti and this channel is dedicated to revision tips and tricks along with much more to help make your schooling life a whole lot easier. So today I'm going to be doing another book summary for economics. I think this might be my last one, but I'm not sure. And if you have been watching my channel for over a year now, then you'll know that I was trying to prepare for economics A-level last summer. The summer going into year 12, I'm now going into year 13. And in that summer I did some economics wider reading and I read the classic economics book, FREAKONOMICS. So I talked about a bit of what the book entails in my summer reading video for economics, but I don't think I covered it enough. Like over these last few videos I've been covering these economics books in such depth, but I really did not do that for FREAKONOMICS. So I'm going to dedicate this video to just refresh my memory of FREAKONOMICS and just give you a summary of what it is. So my edition looks like this, and it's actually my dad's book, and he bought it just ages ago, and I didn't even realise, but on his bookshelf I realised it was there, so I was like, okay, so I've heard of this. And I actually heard of it from someone that had no interest in economics at all, well, like apart from like side interests, but she didn't want to go into it, I'm pretty sure, like at university or anything. So she recommended to me that I read this book, and so I did last summer. So there are 6 chapters to this book, and I'm just going to be going through them one by one, just summarising each one, and then I'll give some thoughts of my own at the end. So let's get started. Oh, I have some notes with me, so if I look down at any point or if you hear rustling of paper, that's what it is. So the word FREAKONOMICS, what The Guardian calls the mot du jour, meaning the word of the day, is basically the study of economics, all to do with the principle of incentives, and it's about everyday economics, which makes it so fascinating, and it just provides examples of how unconventional data collection methods may be, like how they may be a lot better than normal data collection methods, and how these unconventional methods may provide a better insight into what actually is happening rather than what seems to be happening. So the intro, called The Hidden Side of Everything, just gives you an insight into what the book is going to be about. Like for example, the topics he covers, so the 90s crime drop, information asymmetry, asymmetrical information, which I'll go on to later, incentives, obviously as we've covered, and real estate. So there's not like that much in the intro in terms of economic content. So chapter 1 is where we actually start now, and it's called What Do School Teachers and Sumo Wrestlers Have in Common? And this is heavily about incentives, and they look at 3 different stories. So the first one is looking at teachers manipulating the scores of students in school. And basically what that does is it ensures that these children who are actually lagging behind seem like they're not, and that way, because of an American law, I think it's like no child falls behind, they as a school don't get punished just because a few children are lagging behind, meaning that like it's not to do with the child's education anymore, it's just to do with school ranking. So then Levitt and Dubner compare that to sumo wrestlers, and how sumo wrestlers can be bribed to rig matches themselves and just let their opponent win, which obviously again affects the ranking of the sumo wrestler, which actually can be quite similar to the school ranking. And then the third story is about cheating. So there's this man selling bagels, but it's more of like you take the bagel and then you are meant to give $1 into like a pot or something. No one's really watching you, but like obviously if no one's watching you don't necessarily have to, and it's just about how people cheat even though the gain from their cheating is like very minimal. So like literally it's $1. So you know, it's just about like the fact that they are cheating rather than how much they're cheating for. So chapter 2 is about the KKK, and it's called How is the Ku Klux Klan Like a Group of Real Estate Agents? 2 parties that you would not necessarily compare with each other. So let's delve into it. This is about the power of information, and he tells the story of Stetson Kennedy, someone that actually got into the KKK undercover, and basically published a lot of their secret information. And the chapter basically explores how individuals can profit from asymmetric information. Asymmetric information is when both parties, like the buyer and the seller, have different levels of information about the transaction that they're in. Asymmetric information is also something I mentioned in my book summary and review of The Undercover Economist by Tim Harford. So if you'd like to watch that, just click the little I above. The fact that the KKK had information, they were able to take that fear and like profit from that, almost capitalize from that. And that's similar to real estate agents, because they combine their knowledge of the housing market with the fear of the buyer slash seller, in that they think that they can't find a house or they can't sell the house. I'm so sorry about that ice cream van. But yeah, so the deal achieved is usually in the best interest of the real estate agent and not really the buyer slash seller, depending on the situation. And the book gives like loads of figures supporting this and everything. So like these claims aren't really coming out of nowhere. They have support, they have like backed up evidence. Chapter 3 is called Why Do Drug Dealers Still Live With Their Moms? Mom is an American accent. So this talks about conventional wisdom, and basically conventional wisdom is like stereotypes floating around. And the one stereotype that Levitt and Dubner focus on here is the fact that all drug dealers seem to be rich. And they completely disprove this point. They look at the Black Disciples in Chicago, which is a gang, and Sudhir Venkatesh, a PhD student from I think the University of Chicago goes to live with them to just understand their situation better. It's kind of the concept of the winner takes it all. So a select few make it to the top, whereas everyone else on the bottom is barely scraping it. And that completely disproves the point. Drug dealers aren't all rich, because a lot of them are just at the bottom. And because it's like this hierarchy, there's a lot more at the bottom than there are at the top. It's really similar to how businesses work in like a capitalist American society, let's say, where there's loads of people at the bottom working at like minimum wage, and then you have like your top CEOs, you know, like people with a lot of status at the top making absolutely millions. And especially in the drug dealing world, there is a lot of competition, yet only a few make it into employment. So chapter 4 is Where Have All the Criminals Gone? And this is actually my favourite chapter, just because these two things literally don't link at all. What I'm about to say, that is. But when you realise, it's like you want to kick yourself because it's really simple to understand. So basically this chapter is about the 90s crime drop, and it just like investigates like the common reasons that newspapers and just different people give as to why there was such a significant drop in the 90s for crime. The main point here is to do with correlation and causation. So a correlation is basically when two things seem to be having like the same pattern, and then causation is where one thing actually does affect the other. So basically all these newspapers and all these like reasons for the crime drop floating around actually confuse the two. So just because two things correlated does not mean that they cause each other. And what Levitt and Dubner found was the actual cause of the drop. So basically the crime drop was because of the legalization of abortion in 1973, and that was in America, by the way. And based on econometric and statistical analysis, what they found was because of this legalization, there were a lot less teenagers in the 90s because this was legalized in 1973. Like, not to be stereotypical here, but because of that, there was a reduced crime rate. If you think about it, that just makes so much sense, which is why I really like this chapter. But you would never think that by yourself. Chapter 5 is called What Makes a Perfect Parent, and chapter 6 is called Perfect Parenting Part 2, or Would a Rashanda by any other name smell as sweet? So these two chapters are about status, choices, and actions of parents, and how that affects the outcomes of their children's lives, and it points out how many parents are misguided. These two chapters basically turn into a parenting book, just with like an economic influence. Unsurprisingly, what they found was parents with a high level of education and high incomes tend to have more successful children. They also found that children were 100 times more likely to die in a garden pool than playing with a gun, which is really baffling. These chapters really link, chapter 5 and 6, but chapter 6 especially is about naming a child. And on the back of my edition, which is this one, it says, how can your name affect how well you do in life? And personally for me, I don't have a stereotypical white or American name, so that really intrigued me into the book, and just one of the other reasons why I wanted to read it. And what they say in the book is that it doesn't cause a success or failure, but instead it's a reflection of status and circumstances. And it also discusses how names move down in society from the highest incomes to the lowest incomes, and then after they get to the lowest point they just fade out of society completely. I know I said the 90s crime drop chapter was probably my favourite one, but I think that this name chapter is probably a close second. That's how good it is. So now we move on to the epilogue, and the epilogue also has a name, which is 2 Paths to Harvard. And it tells the reader that there's no one major theme throughout the entire book, and it's just about finding a new way of thinking about everyday stuff and just shining a new light on these things with the tools of economics, which is, I think, a really nice way to end. So now my thoughts. I absolutely love this book. I know I've said that for all the books that I've reviewed, but this probably is my favourite. It's just so funny and relatable, and I think that the way Levitt and Dubner have really spoken to their audience is just really they've done it really well. And I also really like the names of the chapters, how they're really creative. They just add a touch of humour into the book, which is what you need when you're dealing with economics-y stuff, which is seen as boring and it's just to do with finance, it's, I don't know, it just makes it seem a lot more interesting. And I think this is probably one of the most accessible books that I've read in this series. So I think that anyone can read this book, just because, I don't know, the A-level syllabus or the GCSE syllabus even has just boring jargon, not all economics is like that. And I just think that this book was probably the best way to finish this series, because it just shows you that even if you don't want to study economics at university, you can still read this book and have an insight into it, and that's absolutely fine. It just opens up your world a little bit more, I think. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk. No, I'm kidding. If you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button and also subscribe if you haven't already. If you have already subscribed, please hit the bell icon as well. And yeah, I think this will be the last economics book summary and review, but if there's anything you would like to see apart from this, just find a way to contact me, DM me, comment down below, anything, just get it to me somehow. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.